Hey everybody, welcome to Marvel Champions Monthly. We are a fan podcast about the card game Marvel Champions by Fantasy Flight Games. I'm Kennedy Hawk, one of your hosts. Today with me I've got Attercop. How's it going, Attercop?
It's going good. Glad to be back. Glad to be here. Back recording? There we go.
Back re-recording. We've also got Amerikano. How's it going?
It is going good. It's good to be back from the dead, feels like.
Back from the break, yeah. So today we are talking about the end of the Mad Titan Shadow campaign box for the second time. We actually recorded it at the end of the new year last year, but the audio file got so corrupted and gross that we completely switched recording softwares. So this is our first try on our new recording software. We'll see how it goes. If people don't like it, make sure to yell at us, and then maybe we'll change. Who knows? But for today, all about MTS. So we are talking about the last two scenarios of MTS. But before that, we have our MCM matchup. So we actually announced this one on Discord because this episode was so late. So it's still going to be valid for a couple more weeks until we get to our next non-re-recorded episode. But the MTS challenge was from the MTS box. I think Amerikano, on our last recording, you challenged us. Do you remember what the challenge was?
No.
Okay, I do. It was Thanos with... Oh, now I'm not remembering it right as we say it. It's Thanos with Under Attack and the modular set that comes with all the characters
Space
from the
Pirates.
box. No. We made jokes about it not being Space Pirates. I distinctly remember this.
Oh, yeah, jokes. Jokes.
Thanos with Under Attack and Children of Thanos.
Yep, that sounds right.
It should be super exciting because you'll still have to use Infinity Gauntlet, and Under Attack adds more weapons just to putz with your day. So
Enjoy fighting Mecha Thanos.
some other game news. We have a survey going out. The link to this survey is in the show notes here. You can probably find it on our Facebook and Discord as well. In February, the MCM team is going to be recording a awards-style show all about the releases from 2021 and Marvel Champions. So we want to know your favorite new hero, your favorite new ally, your favorite new aspect card, all sorts of things like that. Check out that survey. Make sure to fill it out as much as you feel inclined. We will appreciate any responses we get to it, but hopefully by the end of this, we'll be able to tell everyone why Nebula is everyone's favorite new villain from 2021. And we'll probably ask the people on the crew who their favorite cards may have been. Not Hawkeye. All right, and today's sponsor, Amerikano, sent me the email. I will just read it right here. Today's MCM sponsor is Critical Encounters Podcast, a podcast about Marvel Champions, a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. On Critical Encounters Podcast, we take a good look at the most critical piece of the game, the encounter sets. We discuss those poorly understood characters, unfairly labeled villains, and their various plans to shape humanity and benefit the planet, as well as those so-called heroes intent on thwarting them. Okay, Amerikano, that's not a real sponsor. But either way, congrats to our friends at Critical Encounters Podcast. If you haven't listened to their 100th episode yet, it released this week, so you should go check it out. We will have a link in the show notes below. It is a long episode, but it's well worth listening to, especially if you have a slightly more villainous or maybe nemesis minion kind of side. All right. Let's get to the content, because I'm reading what we have from the old stuff so I know what to splice in. So, first up, last episode, we got through the first three villains. That was Ebony Maw, Tower Defense, and Thanos. That's right, Thanos is the third villain of the Mad Titan Shadow Box. Isn't that shocking to everyone in the Marvel Champions community? I'm sure it is. Insert gasp sound effect here.
It was to me,
but
honestly.
It was to you, so why don't you tell us about your experience and you can introduce the next villain.
Cool, yeah. So this box I successfully avoided spoilers for a while, which is a combination of a few factors, but I was able to stay away from them. And honestly, I felt really rewarded when I got the box, and I started thumbing through the cards, because, obviously, you can't avoid spoilers when you're going to have to set the game up yourself. So after I had reasoned that with myself, I flipped through the cards, and I was super happy with what I saw, including the last two villains. So, I'm not a huge space Marvel fan. We've talked about that before. But I am a really big fan of Asgardian stuff. So seeing Hela and Loki in the box made me really happy, along with a few of the other cards that we're going to be talking about. It was a very, very, very welcome surprise.
So, we know we're going into Asgard. Do you want to give us an overview of Hela and her scenario?
I do, because I want to try to pronounce all of the words correctly. Or I guess to the best of my ability, because I think I'm pretty good at it. Been reading Thor comics a long time. These aren't unfamiliar words to me. So, let's see if the way that I pronounce it in my head is the correct way to pronounce it. Or if I just sound like an idiot. Either way, I think the listeners win. Okay, so Hela is another villain that has an A and a B. She has an A1 and an A2, a B1 and a B2. She flips back and forth rather than being... I don't want to misspeak here. Let's just start with Hela. Hela A1 has a 1 scheme, a 1 attack. They both have an asterisk. That asterisk means she gets +1 scheme, +1 attack, and +2 hit points per player for each side scheme in the victory display. The bolded text below, when Hela is defeated, if Odin is not attached to the main scheme, you win the game. So, if you've saved Odin, that's how you beat her. But if you knock out all of her hit points and you flip the card over, she, on her A2 side, she has a 0 scheme and a 0 attack with no asterisk. The Asgard and wounded trait, so you know that you put her on the wounded side. On this form, Hela cannot be defeated. Forced response, after a side scheme is defeated, flip Hela to her mystic side. So side 1 is mystic, side 2 is wounded. You beat up the mystic side, flips to the wounded side, and you can only defeat her on the mystic side if you've saved Odin, which we'll talk about in the main scheme. Her B cards are very similar. They're both basically +1 higher on both of her stats. Her B1 side is 2 scheme, 2 attack with the same asterisk ability. The only difference is that she gets 3 HP per player. And then on her wounded side for B2, she has +1 scheme and +1 attack. Otherwise, they are exactly the same. So her stats are just ramped up a little bit on the B1 and B2.
And B is for expert, right?
Right. The main scheme is Odin's Torment. I'm just now noticing that the card doesn't have a 1A on it.
Does not have a 1A, right?
But it is 1A, I assure you. For the setup, you attach Odin to the main scheme, just like we talked about with Hela's card. On his captive side, you reveal Nipahelier and Garm, set Gjallerbrew, Scourge, Hall of Nastrond, and Nidhogg aside, out of play. Shuffle the encounter deck. So you're taking out all these special combos of places and important people. On 1B, the threshold on it is 18 per player, so it's super high. Sort of. It feels super high. Forced Interrupt. When Hela would be defeated, if Odin is attached to this scheme, discard each attachment from Hela and flip her to her wounded side instead. So that's where you get the direction to flip Hela, like I mentioned before. If the scheme is completed, the players lose the game. It starts with 1 per player, and it goes up 1 per turn. So we will wait on Odin's card. But the side schemes that were set aside, and their partners in order. The first one, you start with Nipahelier, with Garm protecting it. So Nipahelier starts with 2. It's got a hinder of 1 per player and victory of 2. When defeated, the first player reveals Gjallerbrew and Scourge and puts them into play. Deal each other player 1 face down encounter card. So this mentions when... No, it doesn't mention it. Nipahelier comes out with Garm, which is a giant dog. Garm is a minion with 1 scheme and 2 attack, toughness, and victory 2. He always engages the first player. and while he's out, threat cannot be removed from Nipahilier. He's also got 4 HP per person, per player. So it's a pretty big dog, but its stats aren't crazy. They don't really scale with the players, so not a crazy first thing to encounter, and certainly not the worst. After you've defeated Garm and cleared Nipahilier, you travel to Gjallerbrew. Gjallerbrew starts with 3, hinder of 1 per player with victory 3, and along with Gjallerbrew, Scourge comes out. Scourge is another minion, another large minion with toughness, and victory 3. He also, just like Garm, engages the first player, and his attacks gain piercing. He's got 1 scheme, 3 attack, and 5 HP per player. Just like Garm, threat cannot be removed from his associated side scheme. And once those are all done, you travel to the Hall of Nastrond. Hall of Nastrond has 4 to start, hinder 1 per player, victory 4, and brings Nidhogg with it, which is pretty rough. Pretty rough. It's a minion with, again, 1 scheme, but this one has 4 attack, along with toughness, victory 4, and the rule where he engages the first player. One of the rough things about him is that he gains overkill, so you can see that these guys kind of scale up, and this one makes it even harder to chump block it. And it keeps the same rule. Threat cannot be removed from its associated side scheme, and it's got 6 HP per player. So, yeah, it definitely scales up pretty quickly. Let's see here. Then, like it mentions on the side scheme, to remove all of her attachments, Hela, of course, comes with attachments of her iconic sword, helmet, and cloak. So the sword, Night Sword, attaches to Hela. Hela's attacks gain piercing, gives her +1 attack, and the boost effect attaches the sword, as we've been seeing with a lot of the so she's got Night Sword. Oh, I already explained Night Sword. Alright, starting here. Second, she's got Hela's Crown attached to Hela. Force response. After she schemes, give her a face-down boost card. It gives her +1 scheme, and the boost effect is to attach it. Finally, Hela's Cloak. She gains Stalwart, so she can't be stunned or confused. This one doesn't give her any stat boost, thankfully. And then the boost effect is also to attach it. Hela also comes with... go ahead.
So before we get into the treacheries,
Sure.
Because we have those attachments now, we also have her side schemes, right, with those minions. Yeah. So there's a I guess it might be helpful to kind of talk about the progression that this scenario takes because of those side schemes, right? I mean, before we get into the her treacheries, because those are icing on the cake, in my opinion. I think that the side schemes are what make this scenario, in my opinion, a top tier scenario.
Are you chef's kissing at your desk right now?
I am chef's kissing. I am swooning over Hela's scenario. I think I won't tell you. I'll wait till the end, but needless to say, I very much enjoy this scenario.
Okay.
And it's all about the progression of the side schemes with the accompanying minion.
Right. Hela is so like you said, with these starting cards that we just talked about, it shows that this is a progression. So this story starts at Nipahilier, and you move through the snowy mountains. You find the bridge of Gjallerbrew, and you finally find the Hall of Nastrond, and that leads to you finding the captive Odin. I'll talk about Odin and his stats afterwards, but this scenario is so cool because you feel like you're on a quest.
Yeah, I really like how it sort of progresses through a story. Like you were mentioning, all the side schemes and unique minions that can come out, and it sort of bounces back between them. You have to defeat a minion, then you can go through the location, and you defeat another minion, then you can go through the location. It feels very Lord of the Rings like from Lord of the Rings LCG.
I was gonna say, because I've played Lord of the Rings, but it's been years. But I remember they were very much locations, right?
Yes.
And I don't know what they call. What do they call them in Lord of the Rings?
Locations.
They're called locations. Because I know that, and I've also played Arkham Horror more recently, and that one actually you move between different locations. You can like explore. So that's not what's happening here. I see these as like checkpoints where like you cannot defeat her until you travel all the way to the Hall of Nostradon and take. I think you have to. Do you have to defeat Nidhogg? You don't have to, right? But you kind of do because it's just a beast.
You kind of do. Well, you can't remove threat from the Hall of Nastron while Nidhogg is around.
Okay. Yeah. So either you need to take it out or just hurry and rush her at that point.
Well, you can't because you have to free Odin. So you can't clear. You clear Hall of Nastron to free Odin. So Hall of Nastron reads the first player when defeated, because all the other ones say when defeated go to the next basically leg of the journey. But with Hall of Nastron, when defeated, the first player detaches Odin from the main scheme and takes control of him. Deal each player one face down encounter card. So yeah, you have to get rid of Nidhogg first and then clear it.
Yep, so you'll have to get rid of the 3 unique minions and the 3 side schemes, and then you can finally take her down. And those side schemes all have victory, so they're all popping up her stats on her mystic side.
Right, and that's the other cool thing about this. I almost did it again, but I'm really proud of myself. Like as a Lord of the Rings player, that I didn't call them side quests or call these the main quest. And I almost did it again, but I didn't. So patting myself on the back currently.
With side quests in Lord of the Rings, do you have to complete them?
It depends. Some quests have side quests as part of the encounter deck, and like they'll pop up, and sometimes they'll pull you away from the main quest. But also, it's a shared card type between player cards and encounter cards. So some decks use side quests, and you get like benefits similar to how Hela says, she gets extra stuff for each side quest in the victory display. There's a lot of Lord of the Rings cards that say, if this is in the victory display, do this, or like the number of side quests in the victory display give this character +1, etc.
Yeah, these feel kind of like the main quest in Lord of the Rings, right? Where you're trying to place progress from questing, and here you're trying to remove threat to get rid of them. This is kind of similar to Collector 2 from Galaxy's Most Wanted, only it's not a race. Like you have Hela's main scheme and you have these side schemes you have to march through instead of just racing away from the museum.
Yeah, the main scheme actually kind of just feels like a game framework too. Like the thing that you're really paying attention to is the side schemes and how they're playing out. But the main scheme is there basically to establish, what you're doing. But beyond that, with its high threshold and stuff, you're really going to be just focusing on the mechanics and the nice little visitors from what looks like Jotunheim.
I think so.
Yeah, the high threshold, but that is very easily, very easily
met
exceeded from some of those treachery cards.
Yeah, that is true.
We played with galactic artifacts, so there were like 7 side schemes that have victory on them. And
God.
I gotta say, Hela was scheming for like 9 at one point, and we came very close. Our team was always like, "Oh, there's 20 threat left. We can sneak out one more turn." And there was like 22 threat left, and I think she like got in advance, and she ended up scheming for like 9 and 9 in back-to-back activations, and we were like, well, now there's 4 threat left. I don't feel as great. But it was exciting.
Did you guys have Justice Miss Marvel?
We did not. We killed
Hela
the next turn and left all that threat there, like a good Marvel Champions player.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Ignore those nacho things, whatever they are. I don't know what they are. I deal damage. That's what I do.
But yeah, I mean, that's like you said, Attercop. That's like the framework. But then these side schemes are the checkpoints. You have to get through them to rescue Odin in order to defeat her, and it tells such a story that it's a self-contained story within this scenario, more so than any of the other scenarios that I've played in this game. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like,
no, I totally agree.
Disappointing part of this story is none of those side schemes have
Uh,
like flavor text on them to like guide us through a story actually happening. Wouldn't that have been cool?
That's that's
that would
that
have
would
been
have been
cool.
cool.
That's true.
But because you have this, you go through this natural progression where Garm is there at Nipahiller, right?
You
Like,
did it.
is that a cave or something? I don't even know the lore, right? But it's this guard dog, and you got to defeat it in order to get past this. And it's still just using threat, right? You're removing threat, which doesn't seem very thematic for the side schemes as in this sense. But that's just the way that the game operates, the mechanics of the
Yeah.
game, and so I'm fine with it. Um, but then you got Scourge standing on the bridge of however you say that, whatever that is, Gallerbrew, right?
Yallerbrew? Yeah.
Yeah, like blocking your path. It's like, okay, well, I got to take out this guy before I get past it because we're on this quest to go rescue Odin and take her out because she took Odin. And anyway, it evokes that for me, and that's what this game needs more of, in my opinion.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think that this was super good.
So I've seen people take two different ways to take down this scenario. I've seen people that try to push through all the quests before they flip Hela, or if they can avoid flipping her. And I've seen people that try to constantly flip her and keep her on her wounded side until you defeat a side scheme so that she has her weak stats and doesn't have her stat bonus. What do you all typically do? Do you defeat Hela and get her onto the wounded side and then start going through your checkpoints? Or do you start working on the checkpoints and let the mystic side sit around for a while?
The this will come as no surprise, but I am most interested in doing as much damage as possible. So beating up Hela and then solving the other problems is the way that I do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the characters, the heroes that you have and their strengths. So if you're focusing a lot on damage, you're gonna want to try and flip her to the wounded side, so that you can then focus on. I mean, because if you're playing standard on her wounded side, she's a 0/0 and without any, and she doesn't get any bonuses, for any, like, if they're completed, if any of the side scheme or there's anything in the victory display, it's only on her mystic side.
Yep.
So you're gonna want to take her out as quick as possible if you're focused on being a damage dealer, right? And you
Yeah.
have maybe your weakness is threat removal. I don't know that you can win the scenario if you don't have any threat removal, um, at all. You have to have something. I'm not saying you have to have a justice player, but you might. Like, there's a lot of threat to take out in this scenario.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on like Attercop said, if you're
Team comp.
focusing on dealing damage, yeah, flip her over to the wounded side and then chip away at the schemes, right? Um,
Yeah, that can make a
I,
really long game,
if
right? If you flip her for each side scheme, you're burning through her health 4 times, but it definitely makes it a safer game when she's on her wounded side.
Besides, how many short quests are there? You know, it's a quest, so you know it's a real journey. You gotta go through all the different
Rhino's a
phases.
pretty short quest. I don't
It's
know
gonna
what you're
take a
talking
while.
about.
You know, I don't know, man.
What I've come to now at this point is all her attachments can only get discarded by flipping her. Is that correct, right? None of them have discard hero actions.
Yeah, they don't have a
Yep.
removal clause. Yeah,
The main scheme says when Hela would be defeated, if Odin is attached to the scheme, discard each attachment from Hela and flip her. And that counts attachments from like other modular sets too, like under attack and stuff like that. So we let her get 1 to 2 attachments on her and then push her to flip her because you get this extra bonus, which is something I really like. I like when there's a mechanic that makes me want to hit the villain instead of deal with like the scatter that's on the board. And they have to give you incentive to do that. So they did it with Collector 2 in Galaxy's Most Wanted, and they do it really well here with Hela, giving you a bonus for attacking the villain early.
yeah, definitely. So we'll go to the treacheries. If you guys are ready.
Yeah.
Cool. So she's got three treacheries that sort of echo her villain mechanic, and I almost said hero mechanic, but I guess it depends on which podcast you're a part of. So Hela's domain, when revealed, place one threat on the main scheme. Place one additional threat on the main scheme for each side scheme in the victory display. With a boost effect of if damage from this attack defeats an ally, place 2 threat on the main scheme. So either way, we're putting some threat down. And it scales with how far along you are on the quest. So the more stuff in the victory display, the more threat you're adding. Pretty straightforward. We also have the Queen of Hell. When revealed, alter ego, she schemes. Place 1 threat on each side scheme. Or when revealed hero, she attacks you. Probably shocking. Place 1 threat on each side scheme. There it is. So it makes it a little bit harder to get through the side schemes, which is like what Amerikano was saying, where, if you aren't thwarting, it's going to be hard. And she also brings this one to make it even harder for you. And the last treachery is the Wastes of Niflheim. When revealed, take 1 indirect damage. Take 1 additional indirect damage for each side scheme in the victory display. So basically the Herdy version of Hela's domain. The boost effect is this card gains boost icons equal to the number of side schemes in the victory display. So I really like this one. This one's my favorite of the 3.
Yeah, so the Waste of Niflheim and Hela's Domain, those mechanically, for me, I guess thematically more, I think Hela's Domain are outstanding treacheries. Like, when you draw Hela's Domain, you feel like you've gotten so far. You have how many cards in the display, right? So you're getting closer and closer to where she is, to her domain, that it's that much more painful for you, right?
Yeah.
Painful in that card with the threat, right? The Waste of Niflheim. I mean, I guess it gets colder. Like it's colder and colder the closer you get to her. Maybe that's thematic, but but mechanically, those cards are, I think, some of the best treacheries in the game, and it has to do with that that display. What is it? The victory display, and we saw a lot of victory display stuff. I was just gonna say we saw a lot of victory display stuff in Galaxy's Most Wanted, but I don't know that we saw, like, we got a lot of them in the victory, but I think it had more to do with the actual, like, campaign versus actual cards that interact with that are built into the scenario, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I agree.
Which seems like a missed opportunity. Here they didn't miss it. Here they're taking that and they're utilizing it. I mean, it's right on her card, right? Like, she gets a boost for every card in her victory display. She's getting more powerful. She's getting bolder. And when you draw Hela's Domain, you're getting closer and closer to her, like, person, to her influence, to her sphere of influence. So it's more and more dangerous for you. I think it's brilliant, actually.
I think so too.
Yeah, I like that. Waste of Niflheim is a direct damage dealing treachery that doesn't just like wash you out. If you get it, full auto comes to mind in the Crossbones one. I've been absolutely traumatized by that, where things are going good and then his attack is kind of high and you flip a bunch of boosts right away and you weren't ready for it and now you're dead. This one scales up, and when it's at its highest numbers, you should be pretty far along in the quest.
Right.
And it still feels threatening. I feel like there's a treachery like this in Absorbing Man, and usually you've controlled Absorbing Man so well or taken him down so fast that it either isn't threatening, or if it is threatening, things have gone horribly wrong. But here, you're constantly thinking at the end of the game.
Is that the delay counters?
Yeah, I think it does indirect damage for each delay counter out.
Ugh.
Okay.
I was thinking of
this one,
the Steel Kick.
Steel Kick too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I think these treacheries go very, very well with her entire scenario. And overall, I will never, as the game stands, I will never turn this scenario down. If someone says, let's play Hela, never will I say no.
Hey, you want to go play
even
Hela?
even new
I agree
players,
with
I
you.
think.
Right now.
Okay, let's
Right now.
do it.
Hang it up. Let's go.
I'm in. I'm in. Let's pause it.
Episode's over, guys.
And we're back.
All right. So, I mean, we could grade Hela, but I think we're all going to give her something very high. But I guess we should do it. What's your grade, Amerikano? You go first.
This is an A+ scenario for me. It is my favorite scenario in Marvel Champions right now. My number one scenario. Like I don't know if I conveyed that enough during the episode, or like in cutting off Attercop, but it is my favorite. Maybe there will be some that come out that do this same sort of thing with victory display and like checkpoints and telling a story, and that maybe does it better somehow. But for me, it's just, yeah, it is number one.
I have it in the A category. I think it's in my top 5 favorite scenarios right now. I can no longer say because it's new, because this box has been out for what seems like half a year now. Maybe not that long, but it's been out for a while. But still, I agree with you. If someone wanted to sit down and play a scenario, I probably wouldn't take a new player through Hela right away, but I'd definitely take them through in their first couple games, just so they could experience how different but exciting the game can be from what the core set gave us.
All right, Attercop.
For Hela, I would give her an F.
That's not
An F for Fehu, which is the first letter of the Norse alphabet, similar to our A.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Yep, I went for it. I'm probably pronouncing that completely incorrectly, but the joke occurred to me, and I'm committing to it. So I give her an F or a Fehu.
Okay. There you go.
That's the joke. I'm committing to it. So
Hey, it sounds great. It's high praise from us then. High praise from all of us.
All right. Well, she is definitely a Fehu. But we can now go on to the final villain. So, Amerikano.
Yeah, let's go through Loki. So once you defeat Hela, you go and if you're playing the campaign, you go and take on Loki. So Loki's whole thing is there's 5 forms, I think is what they call them. Is that what they call them? Maybe copies. I don't know. There's 5 of them, and they're the 5 variants. We'll call them variants of Loki.
There we go. Now, yeah, that's on brand.
We have they all have 20 hit points, 20 per player hit points. But like one of them is a 2 scheme 2 attack, and he can't take damage while a side scheme is in play. One's a 2 scheme 1 attack with retaliate 1. And one's a 1 scheme 3 attack with stalwart. One is a 3 scheme 1 attack with stalwart. One is a 1 scheme 2 attack and the attack scheme piercing. So they're all they all do something a little bit different, and they all go in the victory. They all have victory 1 on them. And the reason that matters is because when you set up the main scheme, which is called All Hail King Loki. What you do, let me pull it up here, is you use the Loki deck and you choose X number of Lokis. Copy, like however many, and X equals the number that you need to defeat in order to win the scenario. Right? So I think standard is 2 Lokis and expert is 3, and then I don't know what they called it. Did they call it heroic in the rules for 4? So 4, I think is 4. 4 is heroic, and So if you don't choose the 2 Lokis or the 3 Lokis or the 4 Lokis, you just choose the number, and then once you defeat it, it goes into the one of the copies or one of the variants goes into the victory display, and then you're that much closer to winning the scenario. Um, Also with Loki is the Infinity Gauntlet encounter set. Um, so if you look at the cards, I think 3 of them, 3 of the Lokis have he's wearing the Infinity Gauntlet. And a lot of his cards in the deck actually interact with, or his side schemes do, interact with the Infinity Stone deck that comes when you add the Infinity Gauntlet encounter set. So all those stats that I read off are all going to have a +1/+1 because of the Infinity Gauntlet that's going to be attached to him, right? And then when I guess I didn't also say all of those Loki variants when it's defeated, you discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a side scheme is discarded, and then you reveal that side scheme. So it pushes it along, and the reason that matters is because, well, before I get to the side schemes, the main scheme is a 12 per player threat threshold that starts with 1 per player and goes up 1 per player, and it has a forced interrupt on it. When Loki is defeated, advance to a random set aside Loki villain. So that's how it moves. So you defeat one of the Lokis. What's going to happen is you're going to get a random set aside Loki villain, and that Loki is going to go to the the victory display, and then when it's defeated, you're going to discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a side scheme is defeated. And he has, is it 4 side schemes? Yeah, 4 side schemes. So you got Casket of Ancient Winters, which has a hinder 1 per player and 4 starting threat, with a, what's that one called again? That icon? I never remember.
Amplify?
Amplify icon, yeah. So when defeated, reveal the top card of the Infinity Stone deck. Swap Loki with a random set aside Loki villain. So he swaps out. He does his, oh, tricked you, I'm a different Loki. You got War in Asgard, which is a hinder 1 per player. It starts with 6 threat in play. And then when that one's defeated, reveal the top card of the Infinity Stone deck. And then all of them do that. That one has an acceleration icon, Madness in Midgard, has a crisis icon, and Open the Bifrost has a well, I don't remember, like, you get drawn extra, the first player draws an extra encounter card. Hazard.
Yep.
So so there these are what drive the main scheme and the variant Lokis are very connected to these 4 side schemes, because once you defeat a villain, one of the variants, you're going to get one of these side schemes, or maybe a different one if you have other side schemes in the deck that you've shuffled in. But these side schemes are really going to swap them out, and it's going to throw you off because I don't think that he gets the hit points back, right? When he swaps
No,
out?
he doesn't, but I think he keeps all his attachments and stuff, right?
Keeps his attachment. Okay. And that's how I played it. But you might be going for, um, like one of these Lokis, you're like planning on the 2 scheme, 1 attack Loki, and you're planning on taking the hit or something like that. But then you get, I don't know, the 1 scheme, 3 attack Loki with Stalwart, and you were going to stun him or confuse him, and now that's removed, and now he's going to attack one of your other heroes for a huge amount of damage, which is what you weren't prepared for. So you have to play around that, or you have to at least be aware of that if you trigger one of these side schemes, And it doesn't have to happen from defeating the Loki. It would happen from any of those side schemes being revealed. You're going to get a different Loki. And you just got to know that could be a problem. It will probably be a problem for you. And that's in true Loki fashion, right?
Yeah, not to mention
Um,
the gems, like on top
anything
of everything else.
on those side schemes? I went through them pretty quickly, but they all do pretty. I mean, they all do the same thing. They just have different icons on them.
No, I
Okay.
think you hit it pretty well.
All right. He has some attachments. He's got his staff, which adds 1 to his attack, and he has a hero response. So after you make a basic attack against Loki, you spend an energy and a physical resource, and then you discard the card. So you have to go after him to take his staff away. And similarly with Loki's crown, it gives +1 scheme. And the hero's response is after you make a basic attack against Loki, spend a mental and a physical resource, and then discard the card. Those two, clearing. What did you call it before Attercop? The clauses to defeat it or something like that? To remove it? Something like that?
Yeah.
I remember what terminology you used. I don't know if it's the actual terminology, but I liked it. I like
clause.
these.
Yeah.
I like that you have to actually make a basic attack against him and then spend the resources instead of just spending a wild resource or exhausting your character. You actually have to go after him, right?
Yeah, similar to Thanos.
Let's see. The next one is Loki's cape. So this one has a force response. This one, what it does is after Loki is swapped with a set aside Loki villain, give him a tough status card. So that's where what you were saying, Kennedy Hawk, is he keeps his attachments, right?
Yep.
He has to be able to keep his attachments, otherwise this Loki's cape wouldn't have an effect,
do anything.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't do anything. And this one, I guess this one has the same type of clause where you have to make a basic attack against him and then spend an energy and mental resource to discard it.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, I think these attachments, these item armor, let's see, weapon, these attachments are really fun because it makes you go after him. Let's see. He's got a condition attachment, Master of Illusions. Let's see. And when he would take damage from an attack, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that card is a treachery, prevent all damage from this attack and discard this card. So that reminds me a lot of the Loki that we have from Thor's Nemesis, right?
Yeah, I feel like they adapted him really well there.
When he's defeated, what's that?
Yeah, I was agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one is that when he's defeated, right? Then you'd flip the top card, and if it's a treachery, same thing. If it's a treachery, he's not defeated, or however they say it, prevent all the damage.
He's not only
right?
not defeated; he's healed back to full health.
Full health, right? He's got some treacheries in his deck. Let's see, 1, 2. He's got 3 treacheries, right? And he's got so one of them, Devious Sorcery, is when revealed alter ego, you're stunned. If you're already stunned, you place 2 threat on the main scheme. And when revealed hero, you are stunned. If you are already stunned, take 2 damage. So this type of effect on cards where you are stunned, but if you were already stunned, do something else. That type of effect, I love that type of effect in a card game like this.
Really?
Where the card doesn't just fizzle, right? Maybe, and we've talked with, I think Crimson's talked a lot about like, you are stunned. If you are already stunned, for example, if you are already stunned, this card gains surge. Like that type of thing would make a lot of sense. This one not that I think it's the best card in the game, but I like that they have that it doesn't just do nothing, right? Because it's Loki. It shouldn't just do nothing.
As an aside, Devious Sorcery is the name of my first album.
Nice.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is
Whenever
this
it
the
comes
cover
out.
art?
Okay.
Oh, okay. It will be the cover art then.
Yeah. That will
Can't
100% be the cover art, except it'll be me fighting a bunch of me's.
Perfect.
Yeah, in a high saturation black and white, no color. It's gonna be pretty good. So look forward to it. Devious Sorcery, 2025.
Okay. You heard it first.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, so the last two treacheries, one is Infinite Mischief. When revealed, shuffle the Infinity Stone deck, discard pile into the Infinity Stone deck, and reveal the top card. So it just resets it quicker. And if you're playing around that Infinity Stone deck, you kind of have an idea of what's in the disc. You do have an idea of what's in the discard pile, so you can prepare for the other ones. But this one it just messes with you even more, right? It shuffles it. It's not horrible. You have to reveal the top card, but that's okay. I mean, it just puts those other ones back in the deck, which may or may not be. I mean, it's usually bad, but
Yeah.
And then the last one is Trickster. When revealed, swap Loki with a random set aside Loki villain, and then Loki activates against you, which is the worst part, right? Is that he gets another activation against you, which also triggers the Infinity Stone that's on top of the deck, so it just cascades from there. So I mean, there you go. I think they did a pretty good job at making him feel tricksy, like where he's swapping in and out and he's shuffling cards back in the deck and that type of thing. But what are your thoughts on it?
I really like it. I think Loki's probably still in my top tier of scenarios. I think he's really fun. I thought it was a bit disappointing that he really fell into this Infinity Gauntlet mechanic again. I loved the Infinity Gauntlet, and I love that you can mix it with any hero or any villain in true like what if fashion. But having it come right after, well, you get the plateau that is Hela in the middle, and then you come back and it feels almost just like Thanos again, which is a bit of a disappointment. Being like a repeat of Thanos is a little unfortunate. That being said, I think I really like the change. I like the changing of forms. I wish the forms were a little more different. You mentioned that the form that's going to swap in is always going to mess you up. In our group's experience, it's always been the opposite. Sometimes the form actually helps you by which one swaps in, which is a bit of a bummer. I wish the alternate forms of Kang to me felt more diverse. I'm sure looking back at it, they were probably almost identical, but back then they felt very much more diverse to me than these do.
But Kang's a really different character. I mean, all the different iterations of Kang.
True.
Like Loki is ultimately always the same guy. So I get that, but I understand what you're saying. Like mechanically speaking, but thematically, he can change his plans a little bit, but ultimately, Loki is going to be Loki. And there's been stories that really like support that, and I think Blood Brothers, like that's like the main series. It's like, yeah, Loki's always Loki, even if he tries to change, even if he tries to do something different, he's always Loki. So that may not have been an intentional design, but I really like it.
Okay, well, I feel better about it then. The only other thing I disliked is at higher difficulty levels, it doesn't really get more difficult. Normally, when you're progressing through a villain, right, their stats increase or they get some cooler ability as the game goes on.
Sure.
But here, like, the worst thing about Loki is once you defeat that first Loki, you're probably set up as a team. So if you're playing heroic or if you're playing expert, you've got to burn through 160 more health points where you're just making the motions, and that's no fun. It's a bummer at the end of the campaign to have something like that.
Well, especially because they could have done something to ramp it up with the victory display. The cards could have done that, just like they did with Hela, right? Because you're putting that defeated Loki in the victory display, and so you have this built-in thing to actually make it more difficult if you're playing on heroic.
Yeah, Yeah, that's
Instead of
true.
just making it longer, it could have actually been more difficult, if that makes sense. Like it's like this. It's
Just a
like
grinder. Yeah.
you're like, you know what? I usually play expert, but I'm probably just going to play this one on standard, right? Just two of them because at that point it's I think but from a second to a third, well, from the first to the second there's that difficulty jump because you have to build your board state and all that kind of stuff. But I think from second to third, there's not that much of a difficulty jump because he's got 20 hit points per player. That's not insignificant, right?
No.
Um, and so you are probably going to have, I mean, depending on the build that you've put together for your hero, you're probably going to have a pretty good board state, hopefully, by the time the first one's defeated. Um, so my preference is to just play two Lokis, um, or two whatever they call it, two victory Lokis, whatever they call
Two
it, two
variants.
variants. Um, but my biggest that's not even my biggest disappointment with this one. My biggest disappointment is what you first said, Kennedy Hawk, is that they baked into this scenario the Infinity Gauntlet. Maybe we'll get another Loki down the line without that. I doubt it because there's so much material to cover that people will probably be like, why are you doing another Loki? But like, why did that have to be built into it when they could have easily had these side schemes have been a part of, like these side schemes that specifically, when defeated, reveal the top card of the Infinity Stone deck. Those could have been part of the campaign. So he gets the Infinity Stone and the Infinity Gauntlet for the campaign, but not for the standalone Loki. I, I'm wondering about that. That to me, because if you read through the campaign, spoilers, that's what you're trying to do is he steals it, right, and he's got it. Well, that's great. That's just for the campaign though. Like, what if I want to play standalone Loki? He doesn't need the Infinity Gauntlet, but he actually does now because it's built into it. That's my biggest. I still like it. I still think it's pretty fun. I actually just played Rhino with the Infinity Gauntlet because I like that you can throw it on anyone, but I don't like that I have to put it in with him. If that makes sense.
Right. What do you think about this? What if any text that said anything about the Infinity Gauntlet deck said, do this with the Infinity Gauntlet deck. If that is not available, reveal an additional encounter card.
Yeah, maybe that solves it.
I think it's a reasonable way to play it. I think if you don't want to include the Infinity Gauntlet in your playthrough, just treat it as saying reveal an additional encounter card. Nice little house rule there.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just being too whiny. Maybe that'll work.
No, I think that your complaint is reasonable. I don't want you to feel like I'm saying like shut up about it because it's a pretty valid complaint. Like this really locks a really iconic villain into the Infinity Gauntlet set, which you may not want to play with.
Yeah. Well, especially like
from...
what Dan said, like what Kennedy Hawk said. Thanos is already in the box, and Thanos' thing is the Infinity Gauntlet, and
right,
and cutting your deck in half, right? It just
yeah,
makes sense for people that whether let's say that your only experience with Marvel is the movies, that makes a ton of sense to people, right?
yeah,
Um, but it also makes sense for people that have read the comics. I mean,
yeah. No, I really
Loki, that
liked
makes
it,
sense too, but
but you're right.
there's
Like
so
it
Loki's so
is,
much more than that.
yeah.
So, and to be fair, I think they do a fine job at making him feel like a trickster. And I think that the variants do that. Um, but yeah, that was it. I still think it's a pretty good scenario.
I agree. Yeah, they should have called it Gauntlet Quest.
Gauntlet Quest. So I think if we're gonna give it a grade, I think I probably give it a B plus. because I'm still just so bugged by that. But I still think I mean, it's so ingrained in the in his treachery, some of his treacheries. But like, I think that my favorite part of his deck is the attachments and the switching forms. I think that really feels like Loki to me.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I give him an A minus. I I like the attachments. I like that he fishes out side schemes. I think that's really fun and very thematic for Loki. We get another character that mingles with side scheme cards. So I like Loki. I am not a big fan of the Infinity Gauntlet, like you mentioned, but for the most part, I think he's well designed. I think he's fun to play against.
Attercop.
Yep, I like Loki a lot too. Mechanically, I think that it's in the right spot. I like the variance mechanic. Like you said before, I like the side scheme mechanic. It's all very accurate. I think that it just kind of like something's missing, and I think it's ironically the inclusion of the Infinity Gauntlet deck. I think that Loki's the kind of deck or the kind of villain that can stand on his own, and I would have liked a little bit more of that. But besides that, I think that everything else is really good. I think it's a fun scenario, and I it might not be the first one that I reach for, like just for like a casual pickup game, but it's fun to play with other people because you get the reactions along with them as things change, and I think the social element is something to consider. So yeah, I'd give it like a B2.
So for me in the box, obviously Hela is my favorite, and then I would say probably Thanos, and then this one. Um, so I
Yeah,
think I'd
I
give
actually
Thanos like an A minus. So I'd put an A plus for Hela, A minus for Thanos, and then this one is a B plus. But so three of my favorite, two for sure, two of my favorite scenarios, in the game come from this box.
that's big praise. That's really big praise. I think.
So speaking of wrapping up the box, now's our chance to give our final thoughts on the MTS box. So we'll each give our final thoughts on the box, and then say if we were to pick one box to rule them all. There's 3 boxes out there. Which one are you going to pick? So, Attercop, you can go first.
Man, it's still going to be Rise of the Red Skull, but this one's very very close behind it. Pardon me. It's got good player cards. It's got interesting villains, stuff I care about too, like topically. But I still think that I would go for Rise of the Red Skull first.
You're saying like as a whole, as a product, right? With the heroes aspect cards and villains. Is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, altogether.
Okay. Mine is Sinister Motives. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so if I'm going to choose one of the 3 boxes, I think it's this one. I think it's the Mad Titan Shadow, and it goes back to, for me, it has those scenarios in it that I think change it up enough and do things that I want to see this system do, that just make it. I think this is a great game. I think there are flop scenarios and there are really good scenarios, and Hela is the great scenario for me that shows what they can do, to make me super excited about playing a scenario in a box, and so for me that alone's worth it. So
Cool.
Yeah, my closing thoughts. I really like the last 3 villains in this box. You would rank them Hela, Thanos, Loki. I think I'd rank them Thanos, Hela, Loki, but very similar. I was pretty down on the first 2 scenarios in this box, and I still am a month later after re-recording. I've still had negative play experiences with them that just make them not the scenarios that I'm going to set up when I set them up. And we've had those in every box, so I can't really count that against this box. But looking down the ticket, heroes, I'm obviously slanted towards Rise of Red Skull. Scenario-wise, I think that I really like the scenarios from Rise of Red Skull. I think Taskmaster is super enjoyable. I think Zola is super enjoyable. I think Red Skull standalone is still one of the most fun, entertaining setups you can do. It feels sort of like Hela, but with randomized schemes instead of always the same scheme, and it's leaving schemes out that buffs him up instead of putting them into the victory display. So they feel very parallel to me. So I give the scenarios to Red Skull, but mods, we didn't talk a lot about mods in these 3 episodes. The modular sets in Mad Titan Shadow make it really, really close for me. But at the end of the day, my recommendation, or my favorite box, is still Rise of Red Skull.
Not Galaxy's Most Wanted? After all the just kidding.
I talked a lot about that. I mentioned Collector 2 twice in this episode in positive directions. Don't start that.
You did. No. No, I told you guys I was going to be more upbeat this year. So
New Year's resolution.
I won't talk about that. No, that's great. Overall I'm very pleased with this box. Definitely worth it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the answer to the real question is if you own the core set and you're looking to buy a box, you're not going to go wrong with Rise of Red Skull or Mad Titan Shadow. Both of them are going to make you really happy. So pick up one of those 2 boxes, add it to your core set collection. It's going to be a blast.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's a wrap for our first episode of 2022 / last episode of 2021.
Wow, at the same time.
Yeah. Midnight struck right then. Totally.